is Carolyn Wahlskog. I use she and they pronouns, and I am the I have a couple different roles working with the LGBTQ community. So I'm here tonight with Transformative Justice Law Project, and we are a statewide organization that helps people access name and gender marker changes. So we started in the city, and I said, hey, I live in the suburbs. What can we do for folks out here? And through our work, we've been able to expand statewide. So we support people to get a legal name change anywhere in the state of Illinois. So I'm going to go through tonight how to change your name in Illinois, and if you want to change your gender marker, how you do that. So that's, and then outside of my work at TJLP, I am the director of programs at a LGBTQ youth organization called Youth Outlook. So I spend my days with drop-in centers. And so here in Aurora, we have a group called Rainbow Sprouts that meets twice a month for younger LGBTQ youth, and we have other drop-in centers. So if you have any questions about those, for those of you listening online, if you want to write in the chat any questions that you have along the way, and then we will answer those as we go. So, and I just, for those in the chat, if you want to write in, if you can hear me okay, that would be great. All right, so this is what I've got on these slides. So I'll just do a brief overview of TJ Open services. We'll go over the eligibility for a name change. We'll talk about the differences between adult and minor name changes. And then we'll talk about how to complete the paperwork, how to electronically file the paperwork. And then once your name change is done, what do you do? So how do you update all your other documents? And that's when gender marker can come into play. So I'm very informal, so please feel free to ask questions like as we're going, and I'll repeat them for folks listening. And again, if there's anybody watching virtually that has questions, feel free to chime in. So I already kind of talked about this, but again, our organization is called the Transformative Justice Law Project. So we specifically were created to serve the transgender community. People beyond trans people get their name changed. So this process, what we talk about in general, works for anybody changing their name in Illinois, but for trans people specifically, there might be some other considerations that are needed. So for TJLP, our services are offered at no cost. And again, our primary population is serving trans folks throughout Illinois. We have in-person clinics in Cook County. So we have one at Brave Space Alliance and at Trans Chicago, which is part of the Puerto Rican Cultural Center. And then for anyone outside of Cook, we do virtual phone support. So we have an intake form that I'll show you that people write in, and we can get all that support. If you're not part of the trans community, take some of this information, but we don't have capacity to serve every single person doing a name change, but at least hopefully we'll give you some information. All right, so for those of you who are interested, I'll put this up again at the end, but we have an intake form. So I'm going to talk about how to do the process, but if you need help, you can complete the intake form. It's available on our website as well, which is just tjlp.org. So you don't have to do this process alone. You can have help, but we'll kind of go over that. Okay, so overview of name change eligibility. So in order to change your name in Illinois, you have to live in Illinois. You don't have to be a citizen. You just have to be a resident. So you have to have been here for at least 3 months at the time of your name change hearing. And that's changed. It used to be 6 months, and we were able to change it this past March. So you only have to be here for 3 months, which is really helpful because a lot of people are moving to Illinois to find safety. So every state has a different process for name change. And so even if I was born in Illinois, but I moved to Michigan, I would have to change my name in Michigan. So this is a process for people of where they live. And then you have to change your name in the county where you live. So if you live in Kane County, you file your name change to the Kane County Court, DuPage County Court. Cook County, there's a couple more options for what courthouses, because Cook has a lot. But so you have to live in Illinois. You have to be here for at least 3 months. file where you live, and then you have to be either 18 to file on your own, or if you are a minor, one of your parents or guardian has to file on your behalf. So for those of you who are interested, like who is interested in kids versus adult name change? So raise your hand if you're interested in kid name change. Okay. And then what about adult name changes? Okay. All right. So we kind of both interests in the room. If you are a foster parent or yourself know people who are um, in DCFS care, so we used to say ward of a state, now we say a youth in care. Children who are involved in the DCFS system can still change their name. Sometimes that goes through the Office of the Public Guardian. Sometimes we can help. So there still is a pathway. And then previously, if you were convicted of a felony, you were not allowed to change your name for 10 years from after that felony was completed. We were able to change that, that as soon as your like felony or your probation ends, you're able to change your name. And this is a really important change because we know that often trans people are over policed and more likely to have interactions with law enforcement and things like that. So you are able to change your name if you've had a felony conviction, but you have to make sure that your sentence is complete. All right, so that makes sense? All right. Now the cost of the name change is different in every county. So here in Kane County, it's $364 to get a name change. And that you can qualify for a fee waiver to help with the fee if you make under a certain income. So if you receive public benefits like food stamps, like SNAP, if you receive TANF, if you receive like certain government assistance, Medicaid does not technically count, but you have to still show additional information. If you receive SSI, you can apply for a fee waiver, so you don't have to pay that fee. But if you make over 200% of the federal poverty line, so for an individual person, that's a little less than like $30,000 a year, you do have to pay for the name change. And you pay for the name change at the time you file the name change, or you apply for a fee waiver at the time that you request the name change. So there's fee waiver paperwork available on the Illinois court's website. So I'm going to click on this link and show you that the Illinois courts have what they call standardized forms, so that you can use these forms in any county. And of course, the link changed since I put it in here. So I'll show you what my normal trick is. Fee waiver, forms, Illinois. And then here it takes us to the specific link. I need to update that. And so what you'll do is you'll click the application for fee waiver. I'll make this kind of big. So you'll fill out what county you live in. You will be the plaintiff or the petitioner, so you're going to request the name change. So you would fill out your name. If you're an adult requesting a name change for your child, you would still put your name as the adult. The child's name doesn't go up there. And then you would fill out the information. I'm completing this for myself. Here's my name, here's my address, how many people are in my household that I support, and do I receive any public benefits? If you check yes for that, you don't have to fill out any additional information. But say you're like, well, I get Medicaid, but I don't, that's not listed here. You would scroll down and you'd have to list your monthly income and your yearly income, and it has to be under a certain calculation. And then you scroll down to the bottom and you would sign your information. This S means that you can type. So if you want to type this, you don't have to print and scan it. So all of these forms, again, are available online. Sometimes the clerks at the courthouse are helpful and can show you how to do these things, but I recommend, having them kind of prepared. And then you can electronically file them. You don't even have to go to the courthouse. All right. So we talked about eligibility so far, and then we talked about the cost. Another thing that you may have heard around name changes is that up until March, when you were an adult and you changed your name, you had to publish notice in the newspaper that you were getting a name change. And it would have to run in the newspaper for 3 consecutive weeks. So like every Wednesday for 3 weeks. That was an added expense because it could be like up to $150 per person. And it would out people, it make people feel less safe. So we were able to get publication removed from the law. So starting March 1st this year, publication's no longer required, which creates more privacy. For children, you didn't really have to publish in the newspaper. The only time we would use this if we can't locate one of the parents, and we're using this as a mechanism to let them know that their child's name is being changed. All right, so adult versus minor name changes. So when it comes to adult name changes, for the most part, you're going to complete a document called a request for name change, which is going to list what your old name was and what your new name is going to be. And then some people may want to fill out a document called a motion to impound, where you're going to ask the court to seal the case. And there's certain identities that they will seal the case for. And then you'll pre-fill out something called an order for name change. And if you're filing the motion to impound, an order to impound. So if we click on the forms here, okay, great, that one works. This is, again, that Illinois court's website has all of the forms, and they have the forms here for adults or minors. So I'm going to click the plus sign for adults. And there's a packet that says how to change your name. So all the stuff I'm talking about, it's all written out that way. So if you prefer to learn that way or want to remember some of the things we talked about, there's instruction guides there. And then it has those documents that I listed. So we'll open up the request for name change. So this is what the form looks like. So I would fill in my county and I would fill out my current legal name. So if I'm the parent, I'm going to fill out my full name, or if I'm filing for myself, this is your full name that you were typically given at birth, or if you got married and you change your last name, but whatever's typically either on your birth certificate. So then you fill out that name again, and then what you want your name to be changed to. It's important that you make sure that you list if you're a junior, if you have like the third or any of those, like, I don't know if you call it a suffix at the end of your name. You want to make sure that those are listed because it has to exactly match what was on your birth certificate, or if you've had a name change before, so that when you go to correct your birth certificate, it all matches. So you list how long you've lived in Illinois, what your birth date is, and where you were born. And then most people this doesn't apply to, but some people, if they've received a divorce judgment to change their name back, they will click this box. But if you have received that, you might not even need to do a legal name change. And then it will ask you criminal history. They'll ask you if you've ever been placed on probation for a misdemeanor in Illinois or out of state, if you have any arrests where charges haven't been filed, if you have any pending felonies. And then it gets to section letter F that will ask if you're on the violent offender murder registry, the arson registry, and only people that are changing their name due to marriage, as a status of victim of trafficking, religious beliefs, or gender identity can change their name if they're on those registries. So it's a smaller subset of the population, but there are still people that may want to get their name changed. So if you check yes to any of those boxes, our recommendation would be to have a lawyer help you do your name change, just to make sure that you're doing everything correctly and you're not like getting yourself in trouble by filing when you're not allowed to. And then if you and your spouse also want to change their name, you can do it on the same form. So there's information. If your spouse is not changing their name, you leave this blank. But what's nice is for married couples, say, I had friends that they got married and they wanted to take on a new last name that neither one of them had. So they had to go through the legal name change process. They can fill this out together and only have to pay one fee versus paying two separate fees. That's the same if you want to change your name and your child wants to change their name. You'd fill out separate forms, but they can be all filed together so that you don't have to pay twice. So then you sign your name, put your information. It's always your old name, like your legal name, and then that form is done. So that is the request for name change form. And then I'm going to show you the motion to impound. I can get over there. And this is the motion to impound. And so basically what it says is I'm filing to ask that my court case is private. So I'm asking the court to keep my court records for this name change private. Making my court file public would be a hardship for me and have a negative impact on my health or safety. And it would be a hardship because, and these are the boxes that are protected in the law. So you can say that I fall into one of these categories. I'm transgender, I'm an adoptee, I'm a survivor of domestic or intimate partner abuse, a survivor of gender-based violence, a survivor of human trafficking, a refugee, a person who has been granted special immigrant status by the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service, a person who has survived reparation or conversion therapy, or a person who has been granted asylum in this country. So if you check yes to any of those, you can check this box, and that should qualify you for a motion to impound. If you feel like you have another reason why you want this to be impounded, you can select that box, and usually the judge will ask you why. Because we don't publish our name changes anymore, really the only place someone would find that you changed your name is if they went on your county court's website and searched your information. But there's still a lot of fear around different identities, all of those categories we listed. So some people still want to do that, or they even want to go back and seal a previous name change, which you can do that. And then, let's see, this is what your judge will actually sign on the day of your court date, which is what's called a name change order. And so you'll fill out your county, your legal name. Don't get distracted by this stop sign. You can pre-fill out your old name and your new name there. Just don't check any of the boxes. That's the judge's job. So at your hearing, it'll say, you know, my name is Jojo Siwa and I'm changing it to Justin Timberlake or whatever. The judge will sign this, and then you'll get certified copies from the clerk at your courthouse. And then you'll use those copies to go to the DMV, to the Social Security office. You'll mail them into Vital Records to update your birth certificate. So you want to get a lot of copies. I usually get 5 to 10 copies of those. They do cost like $6 or so each in Kane County. So, you know, get what you can afford. If you have a fee waiver, they don't charge you for those. So this is what a name change order looks like. So I kind of call it the golden ticket. And you'll keep that with you for a long time. You maybe store one in your wallet, because you never know when you kind of run into another place. Like hopefully, you know, someone leaves you a big pot of money someday, and then you'll say, "Oh no, it's still me." But so this is a name change order, and then you can also pre-fill out what's called the motion to impound order, which you just put your name on the top, and the judge signs this saying, yes, you know, you've reached the standard for hardship, and they sign off. And then that gives their clerks instruction to make sure the case is not searchable online. Only you can seek it, access to it. If you need somebody else to pick up your court order, they can't. If your case is impounded, only you can pick it up. So you have to kind of plan ahead for that. All right. So for an adult name change, those are the typical forms that are filled out. In Cook County, there's an additional cover sheet, but I don't think anyone here is from Cook County. So we've got the request for name change form, the motion to impound if you feel like that applies to you, and then you pre-fill out the order for name change and the motion to impound. Any questions about any of those? Okay. All right. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, it's out. You don't have to do it. So if it's just like a typical name change for, you know, maybe we decided we like this name better for a child and, you know, change it, and you don't really mind if it's in the public record, then yeah, then you don't need to do it. All right, so then when it comes to minor name changes, the forms are a little bit different. So the parent or guardian has to file on behalf of the child. And typically, even if there's no, like, say you are a parent and you're the only one listed on the birth certificate, the courts will want to know who is the father, who is the other parent. And typically you have to attempt to make contact with them. So sometimes people, when they have a baby, don't put the other parent on the birth certificate, but the other parent exists, like the child was created in some way. So they will typically ask that you send notice to the parent's last known address. Sometimes you have to publish to let them know about the name change. In some cases, one of the parents is deceased. So we'll have to provide proof of the death certificate that that child only has one parent, or maybe you created your child through like a sperm donor or something like that. And so you would have to show documentation that you are the only parent. Um, so when it comes to children's name change, they have a separate um, deck of paperwork. So I'm going to show you that real quick. So again, there's a guide on how to change a child's name. But the two main forms you're going to use are called a request for name change minor child, and then a request for name change child information. So I'm going to show you these two. They look pretty similar, but you're going to see the headings are different on the top. So this says request for name change minor child. And so as the parent or guardian of the minor, you're going to write your name here. And then you're going to say, I ask the court to enter the orders to change the names of the minor children listed below. And you're going to put their full name from their birth certificate here. And on the right, you're going to put their proposed new name. If you're changing multiple children, you can put them all on this. So this form has spots for 4 children. If you have more than 4, there's an additional form you can download to list all those names. And they all get completed as one file. So you only pay that still expensive $300 some dollars, or you can get a fee waiver for that. But so you're going to list all those children and you're going to verify that they've lived in Illinois. This should say 3 months, but they haven't updated the form yet with the new law. So it says 6 months. And then as the parent, you're going to sign your name here. There's only spot for one parent. So one parent's going to request, and you'll see on the second form that the other parent will fill some stuff out. So then this is the second page that we use for children. And if you are doing this for multiple children, each one will get a copy of this, or you'll use a file for that. So it says request for name change child information. And so if I listed child A, I'm going to do this whole document for child A. If I'm doing a second child, I'm going to get this document again and fill it out twice. So I'm going to list their name, their birth name, typically on here, their place of birth, their date of birth, their address, and then my relationship for the child. Most people, and I probably kind of small for those in the room, most people are going to select that you're a parent with custody or parental decision-making responsibility, but some people may be guardians, like legal guardians. Like I've got my niece living with me for 3 years. I have temporary guardianship. You could potentially file for them, but you'd have to you'd have to notify the birth parents. And then, so there's different ways to document that. And then you have to, kind of sounds silly, you have to comment on your child's criminal history because the law is for anyone. So even if you have a baby, you have to, like, and they're 5 months old, you'd have to say they don't have a misdemeanor, right? Usually their only crime is like keeping you up awake at night. But so anyways, you fill that out on behalf of your child, and then you write, why are you changing their name? So I usually check all the boxes. I want my child's name changed. My child wants to have their name changed. Maybe don't check that box if it's for a 6-month-old, but they don't know. And then for our trans youth, I usually write, this is the name that affirms her identity. This is the name that affirms his identity or their identity. And then you scroll down to the bottom, and this is where you list any other parents. So maybe you're married and you list your spouse. That's the easiest scenario because they're probably there with you to fill this form out. In cases where you're not together with the other parent, you would need to get their information and find out, do they support the name change? So they would check no, yes, I don't know. And if the other parent agrees, this section has to be notarized. So at a bank, at currency exchange, if you know a notary, that parent will have to get this form notarized for each child. And then it will ask if there's any other people to notify. And most of the time it's no. But in the case of maybe I'm have custody of my niece, then I would have to let maybe both birth parents know, that kind of thing. So in some cases you check yes, but for the most part, it's no. So those are the two main documents that you need to get started for a child's name change. You could see lots of other forms on here, which we won't get into because it's so unique for every situation, right? For kids, there may be different things like if we sent notice to tell the other parent, but they didn't receive it, then maybe we publish. So there's a lot of if this and this. So, if you have questions, I can answer what I can, or can get you connected to other representation. Yeah.
The library does offer notary services by appointment, so if any folks are taking that form and would like to notarize with the library, we can do that for you.
Perfect. And I'll repeat that for the Zoom folks. So Courtney said that the library has a legal, like an attorney who's here. Was it the second Thursday?
Oh, yes, we do have.
Oh, you said notary, sorry. Okay.
We do have librarians who are authorized as notaries.
Okay.
So if you call and make an appointment, we can help you out with these forms.
So there's librarians who are notaries here in Aurora that you can call and make an appointment. Do you have to live in Aurora? You don't have to live in Aurora. Amazing. Great. All right, so now that you've completed the paperwork, so you're going to prepare your paperwork, or Illinois Legal Aid has a name change form generator. So some people just want to take the forms, fill them out. If that intimidates you, you can search that. I know it's set up for adults right now. I'm not positive for the kids, but you can generate that form. And then for the most part, you're going to file your paperwork through electronic or e-file. So our Illinois system is called Odyssey e-file. This is nice because we don't have to go to the courthouse. You can do it from home in your pajamas. But this is what our e-file website looks like. And what you will do is you'll come to this site, and you're not a law firm, so you're going to skip that. And down at the bottom, it'll say register for an individual account. And you'll click register, and you'll have to enter your name and your email and create a password, and it will log you into this site, and you can submit all your forms through here. So you're going to create your Odyssey account, you're going to activate your account, and then you're going to set up your payment method, which I forgot to log in ahead of time, so I'm not going to show you all my login information. But once you're in there, there's a little $sign. It's pretty intuitive, and you'll either select that and say I'm paying with a waiver because I'm asking for a fee waiver, so I don't have to put my credit card information. Or if you know you don't qualify for one, you type in you can do bank account information, credit or debit card, store that in there. And then in the e-filing system, there's a button called Start Filing, and then you just follow the instructions. So you're going to select, I'm in Kane County, and then name changes are filed under what's called a miscellaneous remedy. So you'll select that, and what kind of miscellaneous remedy? Change of name. So those will pop up, and you'll click next, and then it will ask you for your petitioner or party information. So if I'm requesting for myself, I'm going to put my old name. If I'm a parent requesting for my child, I'm going to put my name as the parent. And then I'm going to go to the next slide where it's going to ask me to upload those documents that we just went through. Anytime you use one of those documents, you save them individually. You don't combine them, don't scan them all together. They need to be saved, like the order has to be saved separately from the request for name change. So you'll submit your request for name change. And then if you are applying for a fee waiver, you'll submit that separately. And there's like kind of filing codes that you'll look under. And you'll just submit those to start. And then that will get sent off to the Kane County Courthouse or whatever courthouse you're using. And they'll process your paperwork, and they'll hopefully accept your filing on the first try and give you a case number. And From there, you can call the courthouse to select a court date. Sometimes they reject your filing because they didn't like the way you submitted things. So sometimes it can take a couple times to get it set up. At TJLP, we do the filing for you for our trans and non-binary clients. So hopefully cut out some of that process. But just know that e-filing is sometimes a little bit confusing, but we do have all the instructions online. So you're gonna file all your paperwork, and then once you have a case number, you might be waiting for your fee waiver to be approved. Those can take about a week. Or if you paid, then you're calling to schedule your court date. For court dates in Kane County, let's see, those are done on Fridays at 10 a.m. on Zoom. So you can go in person, but it's nice to just sign on to Zoom. There's information on the website, and then you, on the day of your hearing, you log on, wait till it's your turn. I think I have this on the next slide. Skip over that. So on the day of your hearing, you log on, wait till it's your turn. They look over your paperwork, and for the most part, they grant your name change at that moment. And then you can go pick up your court order a couple days later. So the judge in Kane County, she sits at the courthouse in Geneva, but you pick up your court order on Randall Road in St. Charles and at that court. DuPage, it's all in Wheaton. Most of the time your minors, if they're changing their name, are required to go to court. So, maybe real little ones don't need to come, but once you're like 4 or 5, the judges tend to want you to bring them if they're getting their name changed. All right. And even if you're on Zoom, you're still in court, so you want to make sure you be mindful of what your background is, that you're not in your pajamas for that hearing. Judges appreciate when you dress up for them, but you don't have to be like super fancy, wear a suit. All right. So any questions about that? Yeah.
We had to complete an order for name change. How do we, I didn't.
Yeah, how do you get it to the judge?
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll have you e-file it, sometimes they'll have you email it. Sometimes the judge will actually just complete it yourself, but I like to show you to have it ready in case they say, do you have an order prepared? Like if you're in person, you could hand it to them. But sometimes for like Kane County, they'll just fill it out for you and share the screen. All right. So any questions from online at all? Or no? Okay. All right. So you've got your name changed. The judge says, great, your name is changed, it's granted. If you do nothing else, nobody knows. The court doesn't send the name change order to everybody. They're not going to mail you a corrected birth certificate. You have to go on your own and tell everybody that you got your name changed. There's not a specific timeline of like, you have to do it within 3 days or 6 months or anything like that. So you kind of take it as you are able. So we have a guide for updating your identity documents, which I believe is available on our website, but I'll click through here and show you. That says, like, congrats, your name change is granted. Here's what you do next. And so it gives you instructions for photo ID, birth certificate, social security, passport, naturalization forms, marriage certificate, those kinds of things. So you can find that on our website. I also like the website Advocates for Trans Equality, their ID Document Center, because you can find a lot of information there. So this is the Document Center. So say, even if you're not trans, I think this is helpful. So say I was born in Indiana and I need to change my birth certificate. How do I do that? I can scroll down and select my state, and I can go to Indiana, and this has Indiana's name change laws, which I don't need because I live here in Illinois, but I can scroll down to their birth certificate laws, and they kind of explain how to update your name and your gender marker if you want on your Indiana birth certificate. Indiana, unfortunately, ruled that they're not changing gender markers on their birth certificates anymore for people, so it's not super helpful, but they give you instructions on how to do that. So when it comes to changing your gender marker, so changing your name and your gender marker are separate things, and you, for the most part, don't deal with changing your gender at the court. The judge is only interested in your name change. So for people who want to change their gender marker, typically you do that at like the DMV, the Social Security office. Well, that's paused right now. You can't right now change your gender marker within the Social Security system. When we got our new president in January, he blocked people being able to change your gender marker on your passport and took away the option to have an X gender marker. However, yesterday, a judge said while the case is going, they're going to allow people to change their gender marker on their passports. So if you're listening or here today, and you saw that news yesterday, we don't actually have advice yet for how to do that because the paperwork is still the old paperwork on the website. So I'm sure in the coming days, hopefully, the ACLU or other places will issue guidance for how to go and correct your passport. Some people have gotten the passport issued in the wrong gender in the last couple months. So we will, provide information as soon as we get it. When you go to change your driver's license or state ID or real ID, you'll go to the DMV, and we know that since COVID, the DMV appointments are very hard to come by. So some places do walk-in, but for the most part, if you're going to the DMV to get a new ID, you have to make an appointment, and I think you have to sign online around 6:30 a.m. to get an appointment. And you'll bring your certified court order of your name change. And then if you want to change your gender marker as well, there's a form called gender designation. So I'll click on that. And you'll bring this with you. They should have them on site, but I always say bring them with you. And you'll fill out with what your name was at the DMV, not your new name, and what you want your gender to be. So they have male, female, or X. So you can bring this with you and it can change your name and gender at the same time. Or if you just want to change your gender, you can just go with this form. Or you don't have to change your gender. But that form exists here in Illinois. So while you can't update your name with Social Security, maybe you can in a passport, we'll see, you can still update it on birth certificates and IDs in Illinois. All right, so there's lots of text on these slides. There's just a lot of instructions. But when it comes to changing your birth certificate after a name change, again, you correct your birth certificate with the state you were born in. So is anybody who would be changing their name born in Illinois? Or are you all born out of state? You're born in Illinois? Okay. Yeah, so you would, all of our Illinois birth certificates are corrected in Springfield. So even if I was born here in Kane County, I can't go to the Vital Records office here. I have to mail stuff in. So everyone to correct a birth certificate uses this form called an affidavit of correction. So it's on the Illinois state website, and it has instructions. It's this one-page form here that asks, are you correcting a birth certificate, a death certificate, or stillborn fetal death certificate? And you're going to fill out your name. So if I'm a parent, I'm going to put my name. If I'm over 18, I'm going to put my new name and my relation to myself. And I'm going to list how my name was on the birth, how the name was on the birth certificate, the place of birth. So I was born at Edwards Hospital, Naperville, DuPage, your birth date, and then the parents' names that are on the birth certificate. And then you're going to list what you're correcting. So I'm correcting the legal name. It was this, and now it's this. If you want to also change your gender, you can write legal gender and write, male, female, female, male. You can do non-binary, so you can have an X gender. Sometimes people realize that their mom's name was spelled wrong, or maybe you're a parent and you changed your name and you want to change your children's birth certificates. You can do that as well. And then you fill out your information, and then you need to see a notary again for this. So a notary will sign this part, and then you mail that to Springfield. So this is only to correct Illinois birth certificates. They're $15 to correct. And if you want 2 copies, you send a check for $17. So you add $2 for every additional copy. These were taking very long to come back, but we were able to work some magic and Governor Pritzker's office stepped in. So they're usually taking like about a month to get back now. It was like 5. So you'll mail in this and there's instructions with a money order or a check. You have to send in a copy of the court order of the name change and then a photocopy of either the adult or the parent's ID. And those get mailed in and then they'll send you back the corrected birth certificate. So again, if you're born in a state outside of Illinois, you have to look at what their instructions are. So I think California is like $50. It's a little more expensive to update one. With Social Security, you'll go to any Social Security office and you can make an appointment. Some do walk-ins, but they've really moved towards appointment-only facilities. And so you'll bring your certified court order. The thing about Social Security is they're very used to name changes because people get married and change their names all the time. So they're constantly processing name changes, whether it's through the courts or through marriage. So you make your appointment, you bring your certified court order and bring your photo ID. If you are changing it on behalf of your child, you typically either need to bring them or some proof that they're still alive. So not just their birth certificate, but maybe a school record, immunization and record. They want to know that that child still exists. And there's a form you'll fill out when you're there and they will correct your name and then mail you a new Social Security card, usually within 2 weeks. This is one of the things that this administration put a pause on. You can't change your gender marker anymore. Thankfully, it's not printed on the card, but they do know it. So right now, you can only change your name on that. And then we talked a lot about passports already, but in order to change your passport, there's so many different documents for passports. So you have to read which one feels like it applies to you, and you'll fill that out. And then I usually recommend just like going to the post office and making that appointment and mailing in your request to change your name. I think we're going to be allowed to change gender markers, but like stay tuned in the next couple of days for directions. But you mail that stuff in and then they'll send you back your corrected passport. All right, so almost done. Hopefully I've loaded your brains with too much information, but other things that you want to change. You might want to you need to tell your insurance, right? Whether it's your car insurance, your medical insurance. If you have Medicaid, say you have Medicaid, but you picked Meridian or Blue Cross Community, there's like different plans within Medicaid. You're not gonna tell Blue Cross Community. You have to go to the DHS office, the place where you get Medicaid food stamps that approved you originally. You have to drop off. There's a name change request form for them. If you have private health insurance like Blue Cross Blue Shield, other things like that, you would call them and tell them. Sometimes they want you to tell your employer. If it's an employer-based plan, you show them that and then they update that in the system. We don't really have to show our vaccine cards too much anymore, but in the height of COVID, we were updating those. You might want to go back to your schools and see if they'll issue you a new diploma or transcripts. Some schools will, some schools won't, just because of their technology. It's not usually because of transphobia. And then, you tell Walgreens, or whoever's your pharmacy, your doctor's office, you start like letting them know about the name change. Okay, so any questions? Did I cover everything? Good. Okay, so there's my question slide. So I think folks got most of their questions answering, but just some things to close out. And then there's resources again in the back that help spread the word. We support trans and gender expansive people all throughout Illinois. If you are listening or you're here in person today, you're always able to help volunteer at a clinic if you're interested, or we always take donations to help pay for name changes for people who can't afford them. And then if you have any questions, the best way to reach us is namechange@tjlp.org or visiting our website. And so there you'll find the intake form, and then a lot of the instructions we shared are up there. But please know that like the name change stuff is ever changing. So we're always kind of tweaking the law to best fit the needs of our community. So sometimes things can get out of date. So just double checking your forms as you submit them.